phones, Babylons can't crack the code.
The 2020-2021 college football season is coming to an end, and the college football playoff semifinal games are less than a week away. The 4 teams that made it to the college football playoffs this season are Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. Alabama is playing Notre Dame, and Clemson is playing Ohio State. All of these games I'm really looking forward to watching, and I think they're all going to be good for the most part, except maybe the Alabama-Notre Dame one. Alabama is favored to win that game like crazy. I don't know the exact spread off the top of my head, but Alabama is expected to win big. In today's video, I'm not going to be talking about the college football playoffs and who I think's going to win or what I'm expecting to happen. Instead, I'm going to be talking about how bad the college football playoff selection committee was. I'm mainly making this video because this has been the worst, and I mean the worst, playoff selection committee ever. All the other ones have not been great, but this season in particular has been horrible. Now, before I talk about how bad the committee was this season and give some examples to show how bad they were, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what the College Football Playoff Selection Committee is actually. Now, the committee is a dedicated group of high-integrity football experts with experience as coaches, student athletes, college administrators, and journalists, along with sitting athletics directors. In the 2020-21 college football season, the College Football Playoff Committee consists of 7 director of athletics, 1 professor and 2 former All-Americans on the college level, 2 former head coaches on the FBS Division I level, and a former chief of staff in the United States Army. Selection committee responsibilities are rank the top 25 teams and assign the top 4 to semifinal sites, assign teams to New Year's 6 bowls, create competitive matchups, attempt to avoid rematches of regular season games and repeat appearances in specific bowls, and consider geography. Now that I have given you some background information on the College Football Playoff Selection Committee and what they do and what their responsibilities are, I'm now going to go on my little rant and talk about things that I thought just were not correct at all and talk about why this season was the worst committee yet. First, I'm going to talk about the Florida Gators. Now, I think Florida is a very good football team with one of the best offenses in college football, and this season, they finished 8-2, and they were the SEC runner-up. Now, the biggest thing that I had a problem with the committee and Florida in the playoff rankings, it was probably SEC bias. And now what I mean by SEC bias is just thinking the SEC is the best conference in college football, and no matter who loses and if they're a top team in particular, they're just going to stay a top team no matter if they lose. Now, a prime example with Florida is when they were the number 6 ranked team on their home field going against an LSU team that has just been struggling all season, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that was 3-5 going into that game. In that game, Florida was projected to win by a lot on their home field against an LSU team that's been struggling, especially on the defensive side of the ball, while starting a freshman quarterback that's barely played at all this season. Florida would end up losing this game 37-34. You would think that this Florida team would drop quite a bit, losing to an unranked below 500 LSU team at the time of that game happening. Instead, Florida did drop, but they only dropped 1 spot. When I saw that happen, I thought that was completely blasphemous because that literally makes no sense for Florida to lose to an unranked team that was below 500 at the time of that game happening to only drop 1 spot, when if another team would have lost to that same LSU team, they probably would have dropped 10 spots at least. Now, in their next game, they played in the SEC championship game, and Florida actually did play very well versus Alabama, but they did end up losing 52-46. And after losing the SEC championship, Florida would end up not moving down at all, and they remained at 7th in the rankings. And unlike all the other teams that lost their conference championship, they are the only one that did not move down. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about that I had a problem with the playoff committee this year was how it's clear that the playoffs will never have a non-Power 5 team in it, no matter how good that team actually is. Now, I do understand with Cincinnati that the last few games of their season, a couple games did get canceled and it did hurt them, but they still have respectable wins on their schedule, and they won their conference championship. And the AAC, it's no joke, it's a pretty good conference, and it's been on the come up lately. And in no way, shape, or form I am saying that Cincinnati would win the playoffs or that they would just be good in the playoffs and be a better option than Notre Dame, but what I am saying is that they really didn't get any help in the rankings at all. They're currently ranked as the 8th team in the playoff poll, and they're 9-0, they're undefeated, they've played good football all season long, and they have teams in front of them that have lost games, and a couple teams in front of them who have lost at least 2 games, such as OU and Florida. Now, I do understand that OU and Florida could both beat Cincinnati in a matchup, even A&M, but the problem with the rankings that I have, it's not that these teams can beat Cincinnati, but it's the fact that Cincinnati is an undefeated team and a conference champion, and you rank them all the way at 8. Now, I could even talk about Coastal Carolina, and even though the Sun Belt is not as strong as the American Conference, the Coastal Carolina team is very good, and they're good on both sides of the ball, and they're 11-0, and they have multiple top 25 wins, yet they only rank at 12. To me, and especially after this season, it's just clear that a non-Power 5 team is never going to reach the college football playoff or be a first 2 teams out of it. It's clear that the college football playoffs are made for the Power 5 teams only, and the group of 5 teams are not allowed to go despite of how many top 25 teams they beat, if they win their conference, or even finish undefeated. It's been clear, and it's even clearer this season, that the non-Power 5 teams are never going to make it to the college football playoff because of the committee's bias towards Power 5 teams. To me, I think it's incredibly unfair to non-Power 5 teams, pretty much giving them false hope where they have no shot at the college football playoff at all, just because they're not in the SEC, the Big 12, the ACC, the Pac-12, or the Big 10. You can clearly see that they have no shot at all, and some of the top teams, especially in the American Conference, where it's pretty top-heavy, and the whole conference is actually pretty good at football, and it's just clear that those teams have shots at making the playoffs, and no matter what, if they go undefeated, they are probably 99% chance not going to make it. And it's clear that they're not going to make it because the committee doesn't like non-Power 5 teams. Now, to cap off this video, I'm going to talk about a couple instances that occurred in the college football playoff rankings that just showed how bad the committee was at ranking teams this season. And now, I'm only going to talk about 2 of them, because if I talk about a lot more, I can make this video literally an hour long. First, North Carolina, after losing to Notre Dame by 14 points, actually moved up in the rankings somehow. You would think, after you lose to a team, especially by double digits, you would move down in the rankings, but if you're North Carolina, you're going to move up. Another example that showed how dumb the committee was with their rankings and just how bad it truly was this season with how they ranked teams, especially some Power 5 teams in particular, was when Oklahoma State was coming off a horrible Bedlam game with OU in which they lost 41-13, a 28-point loss. And what happened after they barely beat a Texas Tech team at home? That Texas Tech team has not been very good at all this season, actually finished below 500 this season. You would think they would probably not move up at all, and possibly even move down. What happened instead? Oklahoma State jumped all the way up to 15. Now, Oklahoma State obviously did not finish at 15, but why would a team jump up that much after beating such an inferior team barely at all, and a team that has not been playing like a top 15 team hardly at all this season? And of course, Oklahoma State would not stay in the top 15 because they would shortly lose to TCU thereafter. Now that I'm at the end of my video, remember to smash that like button, turn on them post notifications, and subscribe for more videos. Be Kelly out!